Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Um, my goal today is to give you some insights about the process we've been going through over the last several years since generative AI came to the forefront of ChatGPT, and give you some of the process we've been through, the philosophy we've developed, and eventually get into the tools that we're actually using throughout the school divisions. Um, Obviously, the world has changed a lot in a very short time, and this is a rapidly changing environment. And I think one of the things that Dawson does really well is allow people, really like me and all of your students, to grow for what the world. We used to always say, for what the world demands. You know, the world is changing very quick. What we all did when we were students shouldn't be what we're doing with students in 2025. And I think that lens is where I'm trying to guide most of the conversation today. Is we all, went through high school and learned from a teacher who hopefully was really engaged from a textbook. Obviously, online learning has changed that over the last 20 years. I think back, I got my master's in 2008, and that was the first time I engaged in an online environment where I was in something called Second Life. I don't know if anyone knows what that is, but it felt like a virtual world where we were like walking around like robots and engaging in conversations with people from around the world. I'm just trying to set the stage for, the world has evolved so much, and schools don't move fast typically. Education dramatically needs to shift. And I think we are really, in my opinion, at the forefront of what our peer schools are doing, certainly beyond what most of the public schools have been able to do in terms of developing a what can we and should we be doing in terms of the world as it's changed. And I know a lot of you in your professional lives have experienced the rapid changes to the world in terms of how people are working, what businesses are doing in this era where AI could replace parts of what humans have done typically. And so at the forefront of almost everything I'm going to talk about is talking about helping our students and our teachers, and maybe you, think about how you can build with these tools and build off your humanity. That's really what we're trying to do, is help the students not give up their ability to go out and do great things in the world. Which I know, as a parent who's had two kids who have come to this school. I have a 24-year-old who graduated from Dawson who has a career now that's being influenced by AI. I have a student who's a freshman in college who certainly in a design school is going to have to evolve on what he does over the next 4 years. And I have a 4. So that lens and my 25 years at Dawson are all part of what I'm going to be talking about. So anyway, at the core, this philosophy is really about, again, how can kids engage with these tools in safe ways as much as possible so that they can develop skills that will help them with whatever's next. And as you all know, the student is 4 right now. We have no clue what they're going to be doing even in middle school. And if the student is a freshman in high school, we don't even have a clue what college is going to be in 4 years. So every one of those constituents, I guess, needs to be thinking, or their parents need to be thinking, all of us as educators need to be thinking about what can we do to get them to the next place that they're going to be, where that is somewhat unknown. I have not memorized my slides, but if you haven't already looked at this, the gist of what I'm going for is we have tailored our philosophy and the tools and what we'll actually do with the students in the classroom based on each division and age appropriately. So what we're going to lay out next, if we go to the next slide, is sort of the envisioning of what it could look like for a lower school student. And I want you to know this is storytelling. I don't want you to go away from this that the things that are bold that I'm not even going to look at right now because that doesn't matter. It's a vignette of what it could be like for a lower school student to engage with AI. And you'll see the same thing for the middle school and the same thing for the high school. What we wrote when we wrote this slide over the summer, thinking about how we would tell the story to first faculty and then to students and now to you, again, is trying to envision where we go. But that story is going to constantly keep evolving. So there's a experimentation, there's an exposure, there's a dabbling, I guess, in the lower school, and lower school students starting in 3rd grade have already started learning to use the tool that we will be using in lower school. And I'm gonna hold off on the tool because that's part of the presentation in a few moments. But it's an exposure to it, it's showing them how to responsibly do it, and it's empowering them, even at the younger ages, to not replace what they might have done for research or for writing or for math, but instead use the tools to build their capacity to learn, to explore, and to figure out, well, how do you use the tool, but why am I using the tool, and how can I use whatever tool it is to the best of their current ability. It's funny, it's very funny to look at these things and go, oh, what come up there? So I don't want you to think that because of the AI image, all of the things about AI in the middle school relate to coding. And that could be a part of it, but again, I used AI. I should say this, because Blair brought it up earlier. Anyone who's played with AI, I hope knows at this point, the way to get the best possible result is through iteration. If anyone thinks that going to an AI tool, whatever it is, and saying, I want this, accepting the result of it, and saying, that's the best thing I can make with this, is missing out on the potential of really everything that we should be doing in our lives. And that's in work, and that's in school, and that's in inquisitiveness about, I want to learn something new. And I think in the middle school, what we're really trying to do is show them what the tools are, and again, talk about what's possible and how to use the tools so they can build their brains and build their skills to go out into the world and do something that matters. And that's at the core of what we do at Dawson. I mean, that isn't revolutionary for Dawson School. It's always been about pushing the kids to think critically and to communicate and to collaborate. None of this AI stuff does them any good if they can't go out and use it. It's not to do well on the test. What's the point of the test? The point of the test is to share what you've learned and to understand for yourself what you've learned and to demonstrate it, and then to be able to talk about it. And I don't want to get to, I apologize for bringing up tests as the example. Let's move to the high school. And again, I'm going to dig into all the tools at each age level and say. I don't even know why I'm looking at my slide. Again, it's a story. This is just, again, going deeper in the upper school. There's a lot more autonomy amongst how the students will actually use the tools. A lot of this is going to be structured with time in class. Again, engaging with how a student could use the tool to review for a test and understand the material or build out on an idea. I teach entrepreneurship in Dawson. So how can a student in that class build on their own ideas as opposed to saying, oh, here's the problem I was asked to do. What's my best answer? I mean, that is not going to be a successful skill for students moving forward when everyone has access to ubiquitous tools. So we have to get these kids engaged with themselves and what they care about and their passion and their concerns, and then let them use the tools to develop those ideas. That's the crux of everything we're doing. Let's keep moving forward because I really am excited about this, the tools. So again, this is basically what I've already been telling you. It's about students. You didn't send your students here to become robots, right? We're sending our students here because we want them to be able to go out in the world and do great things and build community and design businesses that don't exist right now to solve new problems. I think anyone who thinks that the model that a lot of us enjoyed, which was, I'm going to go work for a company and there's a job that's going to be waiting for me at the end of college, isn't a reality that exists anymore. So again, empowering these students to go and create the world that they want to be in and be leaders is what Dawson is really trying to create. All of this is in the handbook. All of this is a summary of the things that we put into the handbook so you could engage with where we were going in terms of the philosophy statement and then really the policies. Now we're getting a little bit more into, these aren't exactly policies, I would say these are being more of the core things that we're trying to engage with the students about. Oh, sometimes there's going to be bias in the answer I get, and I need to know that the answers I get are influenced by everything on the internet. And so that if I put an answer or an essay or a speech together or any of those things, and I'm taking content from an AI interface, I need to be vetting it, I need to be able to back it up, and I need to really believe that it's true. And hopefully validate that it's true also. And you'll see when we get into the tools the way we can engage with finding authentic sources and things like that. You'll see in a moment a scale and this is being used in a lot of different ways in different schools, but this is alluding to, we're going to provide a structure so students understand the rules of the game for any assignment. And it's really important for students and teachers to communicate and say, okay, for this writing assignment, I don't want you to use AI, and here's why. I want you to be able to build your critical writing and analysis skills. And maybe for some assignments, there will be no AI allowed, whether that's done in class, whether that's done at home, and the teacher says, look, I'm not going to evaluate this essay, but I want you to come in with your own writing, and then we're going to build on top of that in class, for example. And there's going to be other situations where someone might say, I don't imagine many examples other than experimentation will ever be, I would like you to have AI write an entire essay just from the question I've given you. But that doesn't feel like a scenario we're going to engage with much, other than maybe me in an experimental way with an entrepreneurship class to show them why that isn't a great way to move forward. And you'll see more of that at the scale of the moment. Can we go back one more second? Because I'm reading at such an angle, I think I already addressed. My biggest point here, that if I didn't already say, I'll say it a little more clearly, is if a student puts information to anything, they should be confident that it's real and that they haven't just got some sort of a hallucination from something, or it isn't so skewed to the bias of whoever originally wrote the information. That's the reason we're asking kids to engage in iteration and reflection on source, validating the reality that, again, I think we all know at this point, a Google search is no longer a Google search. And so the previous skill of teaching how to do online research is evolving to, and please don't think that I think prompt engineering, the term, feels like an antiquated thing at this point already to say we're teaching prompt engineering. We're teaching engaging with tools where you're using your mind and the skills that we're developing that are age appropriate to really try to augment our thinking and our sharing and our engaging with the content. So let's move. This framework, I did a lot of research. I should say I've done a lot of research into how schools are building their thinking about this. And many schools have a branded version of something that looks like this. And there's other schools that have even simplified this to something that wasn't granular enough, where they basically use a stoplight system. They say red light, yellow light, green light. Don't use it at all. Use it some ambiguous way, but go use it. And this is kind of a version of that. The reason I pushed Dawson to engage with this one was because it, through my research, seemed to be the place in the road that almost everybody is forking off of. So there are schools that have taken this and said, well, here's our version, and they're attributing it to the Creative Commons license from these authors. So I was guiding the thinking about this with the Lean team, and I said, I really feel like this is the core and the crux of a framework that can work for Dawson. And over time, we might evolve ours to say, well, actually at Dawson, this can be more nuanced. Because this is so new, and because so many teachers and students are beginning to understand this, I didn't feel like it made sense for me to say, hey, I've already figured this out, and here you go, here's the Dawson way. But already in reflecting on this, I can say a couple things that people have said to me that are minor that I think are worth thinking through are like, well, number one, why does no AI have a 1 next to it? That seems really confusing, right? If I'm not using AI, that feels like 0 AI. Like, those are structural things. And I know that seems small, but at some point I can see down the road a group of students and a group of teachers come together and say, hey, we've thought about this a lot, and this is going to evolve to the Dawson structure that makes more sense. I think this tool is really cool. I linked to this, and this presentation will be sent out. Check this out. Go to this website, aiassessment.com, and read some of the articles. The main author that I attributed this to is the second author, Leon Furzes out of Australia. I believe they all are, actually. But when you look at this and engage in the content, it really does a great job of thinking through. Feels funny to switch sides over here. To thinking through, like, how can these tools change education? This is written for colleges. This is written for schools like ours that are K through 12. So the expectation isn't that a teacher's going to say, hey, this is a 1, and they're just going to put a 1 on the assignment, or even more so, put a 2 or a 3, because that's not enough information. This is just a mindset. This is a way to think about it. And it's the simplest way to say, here's what I'm thinking and how I want the students to engage with this activity. I imagine that most activities that involve AI at all, I shouldn't have said it like that. Most activities that occur at Dawson are going to land somewhere between a 1 and a 3. I would imagine that almost no one at Dawson School is trying to use 4 or 5 other than me. And again, the situations where I'm doing that are to point out the downsides to that, because you've given so much up unless you're just exploring what's possible. And unless you're in the lens of, I want to see what this can do so I can make it better, I can't imagine a scenario that's really even a 4 of, yeah, just have AI do it. And so I've engaged with a lot of tools from a coding perspective, from a design perspective, from a thinking perspective, from a writing perspective, from a math. Like, I've tried to put on the hat of every teacher in this school. English, math, at every age level, all of it. And so has our team. We've really been engaging a lot with this. I know I'm talking a lot, and I'm really excited to show you the tools. I'm happy to take questions, and I'm going to be in the breakout session. So let's go forward. All right. This is the most exciting thing that is keeping me awake at night thinking about it and getting up early before school to participate in online communities of other schools that are using Flint literally every week. I've probably been in 10 different Flint webinars over the last 3 months, and I'm now one of the people, I'll call it, I have to go. I'm one of the leaders at this group. I'm getting up in their presentations and sharing what we're doing at Dawson with other schools that haven't thought as much as we have about how to use these tools. So this is I would say, an actual vibrant community where educators are thinking about how is this fundamentally changing what learning means. This is a tool that we've decided is appropriate to start in the lower school at 3rd grade. Is that the perfect age? You said, well, why can't 2nd grade use it? Or maybe 3rd grade's too early. That could evolve over time. And for now, I would say, let's talk about what we're doing rather than, is that the exact right grade to use this? This tool could theoretically change all the way down to kindergarten. And it's not like Flint is saying you can't use this with kindergarten. And I'm not saying you should use it in kindergarten. I'm just asking you to move beyond that for right this second. Fundamentally, what this is connected to our Blackboard portal. Every class and every student in those grades has a connected account that they sign into with Google Drive. And once they're in Flint, the scenarios they get to engage with, there's really 2 main ways they can engage with Flint. One is familiar to, I think, all of us, which is it's something like a chatbot environment with all of the guardrails that this company has built for us to, if a student was to say, like, I want to do something inappropriate, it'll say, well, that isn't a safe activity, or that isn't a good idea. And if it's something really concerning, it'll probably say, you should talk to your parents, or you should talk to a counselor, or something like that. It's got many, many guardrails. It is trained for education, is what I'm saying, as opposed to a student just goes to ChatGPT and starts typing up something. So while that is an interesting and safe environment, what's even more exciting, and I think I have it lower on the slide, but it might be the next one. I'm going to just explore my slides. Feel free to poke around. Yeah, so this activity world inside of Flint is where this is really completely changing what's possible in education. So a teacher can create an environment for an activity. One of my most common metaphors is it's like the holodeck from Star Trek. I can, as a teacher, say, this is the exact environment and situation that I want students to engage in their learning for this activity. The activity that's on the screen right now is something that I developed with Ellenbogen in the lower school for 5th grade. It took a long time, and this is why progress is slow, to even wrap our brains around what this tool meant for education. And what it really allows a student to do, and really a teacher to do, is create a situation where kids can engage in an activity where the teacher has designed all of the interaction. So in this case, this was about teaching pathos, egos, and logos, and he was focusing on logos, and he was like, okay, I want students to make an argument for one of these silly sentences. I helped him develop the concept. It was, okay, let's pick 4 kind of silly things. That's why it's called comedy board. Let's pick silly things that a student can choose, so they have some choice in what they're going to do, but it's not just whatever random claim they want to make. And then let's help them develop an argument that uses the idea of logos to make something that will be a way for them to share in a silly way a step-by-step process to make an argument like dogs should vote or pizza's a vegetable or something. So if we scroll lower, the first, well, you don't have to go back, but at the beginning it basically says, which of these, hi, I'm talking about your activity right now. Which of these things do you want to choose? When they choose it, I skimmed through some of this. I'd be happy to show more of the slide, but I don't have forever. The student said, hey, recess should be 4 hours long. And I think I skipped a few slides, but I wanted to show that this can do research within it. And it's going to help them find actual validated sources with information that can be found to be accurate, as opposed to just a random Google search or something like that. So unfortunately, because this pop-up's here, you can't see everything that I had said above it, but it's saying, hey, great work, you've got a rock solid case, and I'm kind of jumping later in the conversation. And if we go to the bottom, I think there's a third slide. Okay, right, so this is what I wrote, and again, I'm not in fifth grade, so obviously a fifth grader might type things differently than an adult who's been thinking a lot about this. But the point is, it's not writing anything for the student. It's all guided by the student, and it's allowing Sparky, which is the version of Clippy, if anyone knows who Clippy is from Microsoft. Sparky is Flint's anthropomorphized character that's engaging with the student. And basically it's saying, okay, how do you think about this? Or, hey, that argument doesn't make sense, let's rethink this. And it helps them build towards the intended goal of the teacher. And at the end of this, the students have either bullet points or a small paragraph where they can turn to their classmates and make the argument they've developed here. It's not just, hey, I did it and I click submit, I'm done. It's a way to think and engage and then share and engage further. So in this activity, not only did they go to the little thing, but then they engaged with their table, and then the table kind of built a collaborative group, like each group was one of those 4 arguments. Then they got up and said, okay, class, here's how we can use logos to make the argument that we set out to make. Again, I could talk forever. I don't know if there's people that go, keep moving. I'm happy to come back to any of this and talk at length. But let's keep going. Just so you all know, this week, wow, time flies. This week, all the faculty, every division had an hour session on Flint and another session also, starting to experience this. And rather than going straight to, here's how you build the lesson, and doing this with AL, where we spent hours and hours and hours wrapping our heads around what was possible, we had the teachers put on their learning hats. We built about, 12 different activities they could engage with from all age levels and all disciplines, so they could see how revolutionary this can be. Because, again, I could do an hour and a half just on Flint. I'm trying to show you everything right now, but the possibilities of how learning can be transformed is immense. I would love that.
Sit there finding validated feedback. How do students know that it's validated? Like, as a third or fourth or fifth grader, how do they know that what they're being told is accurate, as opposed to the issues that we've had with other AI formats that they're providing inaccurate, feedback and making up stuff? I think that's important for students to be able to distinguish.
Absolutely. And you said validated feedback. I may have misspoke, and your question is still valid. But what I was talking about was more about the sources that it's. One of the interesting things we've been engaging in, and this is a tangent to your question, is how does Sparky find its results? And it's a nuanced answer that I literally have been speaking to their team about, because I'm helping them get feedback on how to make this better, is when you just ask Sparky a question and you don't in advance say, I'm looking for a valid source that you can point me to for where you're gaining this information, it does much better when a student says that rather than almost like more of the Wikipedia answer. So feedback, that's a whole separate thing. I think what I was talking about was more about sources.
Right.
So number one, you need to still keep teaching. How do you validate? Is one source enough? What does it mean to be validated? Because every website on the internet inherently has some form of a bias, right? Whoever created it has the lens they've written the information. So do I think that this is the perfect answer to the only thing in the universe for how you validate? No, I think we still need to be teaching critical thinking. But I guess what I'm saying is, in the past it was, let's teach students how to use the library, and the librarian was your gatekeeper, and then it was Google that was really your gatekeeper. And I'm not saying unequivocally this will only give you valid sources, but it is trained and designed to not go into the depths of the misinformation of the internet, but that does not mean it will always give you the perfect answer. And the way you prompt with it will influence the answer. And then the feedback part, I mean, you're totally pointing, I don't know if you did this on purpose or not, but like, What is feedback when feedback comes from generative AI, right? It's trained on all of the information on the internet that was available, and it has got, I should have said this earlier. One of the coolest things about this is I can be the architect of Flint and put the mindset and the philosophy of Dawson School at the highest level of what Flint does in the admin level. So I say, this is how I want you to be. I want you to not give answers. I want you to be a guided assistant. And I literally fed in our philosophy statement. And then below that, teachers can say, I'm working with fifth graders, and they can do this all the way down to the class level of, this is the framework for the persona I want you to. So it has the same potential issues of the internet, other than all of the layers of an educational framework that it's got to try to mitigate that. Is it perfect? No.
Changing every day.
And here's what I can promise you. There are people at Dawson School who every day are thinking about how do we make this better. And I am connected to the highest people at the company that we're using. And I'm engaging with thought leaders around the country literally every week to talk about how these tools are changing education. So I promise you that I'm not stopping to do that. And I love that we get to engage now. Yes, and I do have 2 other tools I still want to show you. And I also know we have breakouts, but yes, please leave questions. That's a fabulous question.
I mean, I've seen it, but I don't think so much what to do with it.
Thank you. Every student so far in the middle school, each division is engaged differently. In the middle school, I have done a presentation for the entire middle school on all 3 of the tools that they have access to. In the lower school, the classroom teachers and Mr. K and Dr. D have been engaging in the 3rd and 4th grade, not as a whole, but individually, and it's more focused on the exposure of it. We're going to do this. Dale, again, and he'll be in the breakout session for lower school. I don't know what division your child's in. Okay, I'm going to the middle school one. In the upper school, really, they've been engaging a ton about AI in all sorts of different ways, but it has been less about teaching the tool, because at that level, I mean, at one point I was questioning whether we would even give them Flint. And when I saw what Flint could do to transform teaching and learning, I was like, of course we're going to give, because the possibilities that Flint allows in these activities, unprecedented, and it didn't exist. It didn't exist. Even in ChatGPT, the only way to do something like what we're doing would be if a teacher had everything that the lens that every teacher has. If students had that, maybe they could create it on their own, but it wouldn't have the safety and the research and all the guardrails of what it is. So that's my nuanced answer. Happy to talk more individually forever. Like, this would be a pleasure. Yes.
Outside of your interaction with management, how much Dawson specific training does the model itself need?
That's a great question. The model gets none. The model, in my opinion, exists beyond Dawson. I actually spoke to the woman who's their head of products basically the other day, and I kind of asked that question of every single time a student is writing anything in one of these things, how is it keeping the context of the instructions I've written in the highest level, and then the teacher instructions, and then the student who may have said, like, I struggle with reading, can you make your answer shorter? Or I need an audio version of the, those kind of level of interaction. And every single interaction on the back end the user's not seeing is being included in the API hit but none of the models trained on any of the tools I'm about to show. And that's part of the purpose. Why don't I show you these other, I mean, again, if we can make this meeting 3 more hours, I would be psyched. You're welcome to ask.
I want to get to your other
Okay.
resources, which is awesome. But just real quick, I think it might be appropriate to throw this in. This is on a global stage. I'm curious what the outlook is, because like China, for example, is so far way ahead of us in many aspects, and they like mandating this for down to kindergarten. So I'm just kind of curious, based on what you've seen, how we are following or not following a roadmap on a global stage.
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't.
No, I mean, quick answer.
I mean, I actually haven't thought about the global stage as much as the US stage, to be honest. And I don't think you were asking about DeepSeek. I think you're talking about the world.
Yeah.
And that's it's a great framework, and I'm gonna go home and when I'm sleeping and when I'm awake, both think and dream about that. But then on the US stage and in independent schools, we are at the forefront. I can't tell you how many people, I met with multiple heads of schools that I've been here half my life. I have a big connection, and I met with heads of schools. They don't have AI philosophies, they don't have AI policies, they don't have tools. It's the Wild West, like the majority, not all schools, but we have educators with this school that are meeting with other educators, not just IT parents, but teachers that are doing this at schools, like Sidwell Friends and Greenhill and Andover and Exeter and Vale Mountain School, thinking and talking about how we push. And Flint, in my opinion, it's funny that I'm about to say the word Cadillac, but it feels like it's the Cadillac of the options in the educational AI tool set. And again, the tool's not enough, right? The point is how we're using the tool, and that's true for the kids, that's true. That's why I'm engaging in as many different ways to outreach and grow and learn. So what you're seeing in here is this our first example? Sorry.
That is.
This is a chat. So this is like basically like you were in ChatGPT, except now you're in this environment that's trained on what the school is and its ability to help a student who's inquisitive and thoughtful and wants to learn not just what the teachers ask them to do. That's what we all should want our students to do, is to go beyond what they were assigned and to want to think about something. I tried to come up with something I was curious about, which was understanding more about like the moon cycle. So this was just a very brief, hey, I want to understand how tides are influenced. And I knew a little bit about this, but I wanted to see what would it give me. So here's the question. It gave me an example that tried to explain it, and also this is an AI generated answer, which I looked at for a while and thought, it's sort of getting to my question, but it isn't really getting me all the way there. So I actually said, hey, this isn't clear. Can you find me a website with a better diagram to help me understand? And it went out and found, again, this is what I'm about finding resources that are authentic and likely to lead to an answer that isn't just a Google search. A NASA website, and a NOAA website, and I could expand that, but that was its best way to help guide me towards a representation that would be easier and likely better because it was created by NASA as opposed to an AI generated answer. Again, I knew I wouldn't have too much time. I'm probably already gone a little bit over, and fortunately there's only two other things. I didn't even show them two other tools. So let's keep going. I was just trying to show what was possible. All right. This is not available for lower school. This is available to all middle school and upper school students. This is called Notebook LM. If you don't know what this is, I hope that this makes you want to go out and try it. The idea of Notebook LM is, and this is a Google product, back to the question from earlier, anything a student puts into their Google Notebook LM will not be trained by Google, trained to the model for Google. It says it right at the bottom of the page. Actually, it's hidden on that. It's not on my screenshot, but it says it just like it would in their email, just like it would say in their Google Drive, just like it says it in the next tool. But the idea is students can take materials that they have and then engage with those materials. So in this case, I was like, oh, middle schoolers studying chemistry. And I found online a article in an online textbook, I found a YouTube video, and I found a chapter 1 explanation. Theoretically, this would be more likely to be used by a student who says, hey, my teacher's asked me to read these things and I'm studying, but I don't fully get it. Maybe I'm not a strong reader. Maybe I'm a great reader. This lets you engage in materials in ways that, again, yes, you could ask ChatGPT to do this, but it's designed, it's an interface that's for engaging with your content, not the whole internet, right? So are we teaching this? Absolutely. I showed the middle schoolers how to build these things. I'm teaching my students to use them, and I'm giving them examples of how they could. So if we go to the next part, rather than doing a live demo, which can fail, I decided to make a YouTube video of myself using this tool. So this will just give you a taste, and I'll kind of narrate as we're going. That went fast. Wow, this went way too fast. I probably zoomed it up. Let's just go back to the beginning and pause it for a second, just to explain what's happening. The left side are your materials. The middle is your chat area where right to center, you can ask any question you want about those sources. And on the right, we have the studio area where you can engage with its pre-built but modifiable by the user audio podcast, which is kind of crazy, and I have a demo of it. There's a video version of that same thing, which is really just like a slide deck with audio over it. Quizzes, flashcards, reports, blog posts. but they're all customizable by the student. So if I'm studying this and I have the material and I don't understand it, this is a way to engage with the material. I have students in my entrepreneurship class that are expected to read 3 or 4 articles and watch multiple videos basically every week. And so if you're not a strong reader, or even if you were, this is a great way to reinforce your understanding about your materials. Let's just play through and let's stand back here for a second. This is sped up by me because it was a long. So this is where I asked it to create a quiz. Again, it's making the quiz from the content in that material. This would be closer to what the student was doing if the student took the resources that they had to create the stack of sources. The reason it's called Notebook LM again is it's like you have a pad of paper, but you're creating the papers. So now I've made flashcards. Again, the student is choosing theoretically which of these things it wants to have built for that. And I tried to go really quick because I knew I wouldn't have a lot of time. So it's going to jump out of that again. Second. Okay, so building this mind map thing is mind blowing. By the way, the students can put their own documents into this, right? So they can put an essay they've written and see, like, what does this look like? Does it make sense? Have I covered the things I thought I was covering? There's so many ways to engage in thinking with these tools. Any one of those modules, I just clicked on one, that means that in the middle, it's now going to focus on the thing I just clicked out of the mind map. So it summarized all that information. I chose definite volume and shape for a solid, and now it's giving me a summary with sources from my own content. So this is an amazing tool to engage with the materials that a student has been given, and they could use this with their own materials. And I think the last part, which I think is gimmicky.
Really thought about stuff. Your chair, what's actually going on deep inside on this tiny invisible level, especially when things,
Is that below the surface, there's this constant unseen things.
So again, the reason I think that may or may not really be that helpful is because it's imitating what a podcast would be about that content. If we had engaged in the entire 11 minutes, we would have gone farther into the crux of them actually thinking in, but that is generated audio based on the actual information. I'm not an audio learner. I much prefer to read, but if I wasn't a strong reader, or even if I wanted to study on an airplane, I wanted to listen to it, I think that could be a really engaging way. The students can even click the pencil and say, I'd like to hear more about this topic. It will generate that podcast version based on what they asked for. Let's move to the last example. So Gemini, if you don't know already, is Google's LLM. It is on par with what ChatGPT is. It is multi-purpose. It can generate images, although I shouldn't have said that because in the student version, Google has protected them from doing that. So if a student wants to create an image and they're a high school student, I think we all know, they can use whatever tool they want. But if they're in their Dawson Google account, and it's true for middle school also, it will mostly focus on them doing things that are text-based. It actually can be used for some coding. If your child is into coding, which I am, this is unbelievable in terms of, I would say, vibe coding, where you're trying to describe what you want to build. It's unbelievable. So why don't we go ahead and click on this also? And this is a very quick summary of, I think I have 2 examples. There we go. So this is another, hey, I'm interested in this. I want to learn about a topic. Same thing can be done in Flint. Finding that it's providing resources. And again, this is so fast, I'm not even sure how much this is landing for you. I wanted this to work for people afterwards also. It's funny to watch her type on a recording. So this is me metacognating and making sure that I understand what I just read. That last thing with me saying, I think I get this is right. And I'm sorry that was so fast. This presentation will be sent out. I know I'm over time. This is almost just like for fun. At this point, this was me, and this is probably 30 iterations in from the beginning where it was just a bunch of butterflies randomly going around. I probably literally did 30 different iterations over the course of a week to get from that to what you'll eventually see at the end, just to show what's possible. And again, coding is a fun, engaging thing that people have been doing for a long time, but that whole world has changed. Any of you that are working in that industry know the idea that someone's just gonna sit there and write all of their code from scratch isn't real. And at the same time, if someone doesn't have any skill in this whatsoever, while it's exciting to build this, the skills of someone who's actually learned about programming are obviously gonna be stronger to build what they're looking for, rather than me just at the whims of what it builds based on my instructions. It was really just to show what the possibilities are. And I didn't show it here, but you can flip back and forth between code view and what it's built. Please reach out to me. I'll be here. I'm not gonna leave till you leave, and then you can email me and we can talk more, and I'm happy to do other sessions too. So thank you so much.